Did you know that 70% of people fear public speaking more than death? That means, for many of us, speaking in front of a crowd is scarier than facing a life-threatening situation. But here's the good news: starting your speech the right way can make all the difference. A great opening can turn nerves into confidence and hook your audience from the very first second. Imagine this: you're about to speak, and instead of feeling nervous, you feel in control. Your audience is hanging on every word. How? It all starts with your opening. In this video, you'll learn exactly how to start your speech like a pro. We'll cover the most effective ways to grab attention, and we'll show you the worst mistakes you should avoid. Whether you're speaking to a large crowd or a small group, the strategies you'll discover here can help you make a lasting impression. Ready to take your speech to the next level? Let's dive in. Chapter 1: Hook, Line, and Speech. Crafting a killer opening. If you want to grab attention right away, start with a hook. A hook is any opening statement that catches the listener's attention and makes them want to hear more. Think of it like bait: you want something irresistible. One of the most effective ways to hook your audience is by using an unexpected fact. For example, did you know that more people are afraid of public speaking than of dying? This surprising fact, from a study by the National Institute of Mental Health, immediately piques interest. It's not just shocking, it's relatable. Most people fear public speaking, and this fact draws them in. Another great hook is asking an intriguing question. How many of you have ever felt nervous speaking in front of a crowd? This question not only engages the audience but makes them feel connected to you right away. It invites them to reflect and relate to your message. Also, don't underestimate the power of humor. A clever joke or a funny anecdote can lighten the mood and break the ice. Just make sure the joke is relevant to your topic and audience. Be careful, though. Starting with something too general, like, "Good morning, everyone," can make you sound robotic and uninspired. Avoid cliches. The goal is to stand out, not blend in. Statistics can also be a great hook. A well-timed stat can set the tone for your speech and show your expertise. According to a 2021 study by Content Marketing Institute, nearly 70% of consumers say they make buying decisions based on content that speaks to their interests. This helps establish authority early. Remember, your opening should spark curiosity. People should feel like they want to learn more about what you're saying. Chapter 2: The Power of a Bold Statement. Saying the unspoken. Sometimes, to truly engage an audience, you need to be bold. A strong, controversial statement can immediately grab attention and make your listeners lean in. Think of it as breaking the silence and addressing the elephant in the room. Take, for example, Steve Jobs' 2005 Stanford University commencement address. He didn't start with pleasantries. Instead, he opened with, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work." This statement wasn't just motivational, it was an invitation to think critically about life and work. It made listeners reflect and challenge their own beliefs. A bold statement like this can position you as a thought leader, someone who isn't afraid to speak the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. This could be something like, "What if I told you everything you've been taught about success is wrong?" Such a statement forces your audience to pay attention and start thinking differently. However, it's important to balance boldness with relevance. A statement that's too out there can confuse your audience or even turn them off. Make sure your bold claim is tied to the core message of your speech. When you speak confidently and take risks, it shows you're passionate about your topic. The power of being bold also lies in vulnerability. Opening with a personal confession or challenge can humanize you and create a stronger connection with your audience. For example, "I've failed more times than I care to admit, but those failures taught me more than success ever did." Research backs this up. A 2017 study from the University of California found that vulnerability in storytelling makes speakers appear more relatable and trustworthy. When your audience can see your authentic self, they're more likely to listen and engage. The key takeaway here is to start strong. Don't be afraid to challenge expectations. A bold statement, when done right, can set the tone for the entire speech. Chapter 3: The Worst Openers. How to avoid starting with a snooze. As much as we want to talk about great openers, it's just as important to know what not to do. Many speeches fail right from the start due to poor opening lines. The most common mistake? A bland and uninspiring introduction. You've probably heard the typical, "Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today." This generic greeting might be polite, but it's also forgettable. Your audience is already thinking about what's for lunch, not paying attention to what you're saying. Instead, open with something memorable. A statistic, a story, or a question that draws them in. Another speech opener that falls flat is starting with a quote, especially if it's overused. A popular quote from Albert Einstein or Martin Luther King Jr. might sound insightful, but it's been heard too many times to have the same impact. If you must use a quote, make sure it's unique and ties directly to your message. Even better, create a quote of your own that reflects your personal insights. Additionally, avoid long, drawn-out explanations of who you are or why you're there. While it's important to establish credibility, bombarding the audience with your resume can be tedious. Keep it short and focus on why you're the right person to be speaking on the topic. One of the worst openers, in fact, is to start with an apology. "I'm sorry I'm late," or "I don't know if I'm the best person to talk about this," instantly lowers your credibility. It makes you seem unsure of yourself and your message. Also, don't open with a long story or anecdote that's unrelated to the speech's message. While storytelling can be powerful, an irrelevant or off-track story can lose your audience's attention right from the start. Lastly, avoid starting with a question that's too obvious or easy to answer. "How many of you are excited to be here?" isn't a powerful question, it's more of a filler. Instead, ask something that makes the audience think, like, "What if everything you've been told about success was wrong?" By avoiding these common pitfalls and focusing on creating a powerful, relevant opener, you can ensure that your speech starts on the right foot. If you're finding these tips useful, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more public speaking strategies that will boost your confidence and skills. Chapter 4. Tell a story. The secret weapon for instant connection. Storytelling is one of the most powerful tools a speaker has. Humans are wired to connect with stories, and using them at the start of a speech can help establish an instant connection with your audience. People remember stories much better than facts or figures. A study by the Stanford Graduate School of Business found that storytelling is 22 times more memorable than just sharing data. Starting with a personal story, especially one that relates to your topic, creates an emotional hook. It allows your audience to see the world from your perspective, making them more likely to stay engaged. For instance, in his TED Talk, How to Speak So That People Want to Listen, Julian Treasure opens with a story about his childhood and how he was taught the value of good listening. This immediately humanizes him and establishes his credibility. When you tell a story, make sure it has a purpose. A good story should connect directly to the main theme of your speech. It shouldn't be a random tale, it should serve as a bridge to the message you're about to deliver. Stories allow you to illustrate abstract concepts in a way that feels real and relatable. The beauty of stories is that they can evoke emotions. Whether it's humor, sadness, or inspiration, emotional connections help your audience relate to your message on a deeper level. When you tap into their emotions, you're creating an experience, not just delivering information. But how do you structure a good story? Follow the classic arc: set the scene, introduce a challenge, and show how it was overcome. This gives your audience a sense of progression and builds anticipation. Think of Steve Jobs' famous Stanford address, where he recounts his failures and how they ultimately led him to success. It's simple but powerful. Remember to be concise. Don't drag the story on longer than necessary, or it might lose its impact. The goal is to captivate, not overwhelm your listeners with excessive detail. One great example of storytelling comes from Maya Angelou. In her speeches, she often used anecdotes from her own life, like her experiences growing up, to connect with her audience. This makes her message more authentic and relatable. Finally, consider using visuals or props to enhance your story. People remember images better than words alone, so if you can tie your story to a relevant visual, your audience will likely remember it longer. Chapter 5. Play the pause. Silence is golden. In a world where everything is fast-paced, silence often gets overlooked. However, the strategic use of silence can be one of your strongest speech tools. A well-timed pause can create anticipation, add drama, and help emphasize important points. Silence allows your audience to digest what you've just said. It gives them a moment to reflect on your words and gives you a second to gather your thoughts. Research by the University of Southern California found that pauses help listeners process information better, making it easier for them to retain key points. Many speakers make the mistake of rushing through their speeches, fearing silence will make them seem awkward. However, when you rush, you risk losing the audience's attention. Pausing allows you to breathe, regain composure, and set a rhythm that your audience can follow. In fact, silence is incredibly powerful when used to make a statement. Consider Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous, "I Have a Dream" speech. Before he delivered the iconic phrase, there was a brief pause that added weight and emotion to the moment. It made people hang on to every word that followed. One of the most impactful speeches in history, Winston Churchill's "We shall fight on the beaches," is full of strategic pauses. Churchill knew the power of pacing, and his pauses gave each word the maximum impact. Think of silence as an emotional amplifier. When you pause after an important statement, it signals to your audience that what you just said is significant. It's like giving your words space to breathe. Pausing can also build tension. If you're about to share something powerful, use a brief pause right before. This builds anticipation and makes your audience even more eager to hear what comes next. Silence can also break up a speech into digestible chunks. It's a way to create natural breaks, so your audience doesn't feel overwhelmed. A quick pause after each point gives people a chance to process the information. Finally, be comfortable with silence. Don't feel the need to fill every second with words. Sometimes, a pause is more powerful than anything you could say. If you've enjoyed these tips, make sure to subscribe for more strategies that can help you become a more confident and effective speaker. Chapter 6: Interactive Openers. Break the fourth wall. Engagement is key when it comes to starting a speech. One of the best ways to do that is by involving your audience right from the beginning. Interactive openers create a two-way connection that immediately draws listeners in and makes them feel like they're part of the conversation. One of the simplest ways to engage your audience is by asking them to participate. Polls, either verbal or through raised hands, can instantly get your audience involved. For example, if you're speaking about the importance of mental health, you could ask, "How many of you have ever felt stressed at work?" This question invites them to reflect, while making them more invested in what you're about to say. Another effective interactive strategy is asking your audience to imagine something. For example, imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out you've won the lottery. What would you do first? This type of exercise gets people thinking and opens the door to a conversation they're eager to have. If you're speaking in a room where the technology allows for it, consider using live polls or audience text responses. Tools like Mentimeter allow your audience to answer questions via their phones, providing instant feedback. This interactive element can set your speech apart and make the experience feel more dynamic. Sometimes, you can even make your audience an active part of the speech itself. If your topic lends itself to it, a quick demonstration or activity can break the ice. For instance, in a speech about communication skills, you might ask your audience to partner up and practice a quick, non-verbal communication exercise. Interactive openers also set the tone for the rest of the speech. When you involve your audience early on, it encourages them to stay involved throughout. A study by Harvard Business Review found that when audiences are engaged at the start, they remain more attentive and more likely to retain information. Additionally, asking your audience questions can give you insight into their thoughts and expectations. This allows you to tailor your message right from the beginning, making it more relevant to their needs. Interactive openers work well because they transform the speaker-audience relationship. Instead of just talking at your audience, you're engaging with them, creating a collaborative experience. This fosters a sense of community and makes the audience feel valued. One powerful technique is the call and response method. You might start with, "When I say leadership, you say action." This gets people excited and primes them for the message ahead. Finally, always remember to read the room. Some audiences are more interactive than others. If you sense that your audience is shy or reserved, adjust your approach accordingly. It's all about creating a comfortable environment for them to participate.